Let me tell you about a morning I have never forgotten. I was standing in a field, not my field, someone else's field, doing work that was not my work for a wage that barely covered what I owed. And I remember looking up at the sky just for a moment, the way a man does when he is tired but cannot afford to stop. And a thought came to me, a simple thought, a dangerous thought. Zen, is this it? Not the work, not the field, not even the wage, but the whole arrangement, the whole design of my days. Oh, is this the life I had constructed? Or simply the life that had happened to me while I was busy surviving? I want to ask you the same question this morning, not to make you uncomfortable, though perhaps a little discomfort is exactly what is needed. I want to ask you, are you making a living or are you designing a life? Stand in, because here is what I have come to understand after a lifetime of study, of failure, of rebuilding, and of watching thousands of people walk both roads. Those two things, making a living and designing a life, they are not the same. They are not even close to the same. One is survival, the other is intention. One is reaction, the other is architecture. One asks, what can I earn? The other asks, what can I become? And the distance between those two questions, that distance is the whole story of a human life. Rohn, stay with me, because what I am about to share with you took me years to understand, and I believe it may be the most important distinction I have ever made. There is a phrase I have returned to more times than I can count. I have said it on stages. I have written it in letters. I have whispered it to myself on quiet mornings when the world was still. And is this you must make a living, and you must design a life. Now, most people hear that and they nod. They think, yes, of course, that makes sense. And then they go right back to doing what they were doing before, which is making a living, and only making a living and calling it a life. But I want you to sit with that distinction for a moment. Really sit with it. Making a living is necessary. I am not dismissing it. You must eat. You must pay your debts. You must provide for the people who depend on you. That is honorable work. That is dignified labor. I have done it, and I respect every person who does it well. But here is the danger. Here is the trap that catches so many good, hardworking, well-meaning people. They become so skilled at making a living that they never pause long enough to ask whether they are living at all. They wake up, they work, they sleep, they wake up again. The seasons change around them. The years stack up behind them. And one day, not a dramatic day, not a day with thunder and lightning, just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, they look around and realize that the life they are living is not the life they chose. It is simply the life that accumulated while they were busy keeping up. That is not a failure of effort. Most of those people work incredibly hard. That is a failure of design. Nay, a house does not build itself. You know that. A business does not organize itself. A garden does not plant itself. And a life, a rich, meaningful, purposeful life, does not design itself. It requires the same thing every great structure requires an architect. Someone who looks at the empty space and says, hey, here is what I intend to build. You are that architect. You have always been that architect. And the only question is whether you have picked up the pencil. Let me tell you a story. It is a simple story, as most true stories are. Two young men went to work on the same building site on the same morning. Same age, same tools, same starting wage. An observer watching from a distance would have said they were equals. The first man, let us call him the laborer, was a good worker. Honest, strong, punctual. Every morning he arrived, picked up his tools, and did exactly what was asked of him. He laid bricks when they told him to lay bricks. He stopped when they told him to stop. He was reliable. He was competent. And at the end of every week, he took his wage, paid his bills, and came back Monday to do it again. The second man, the builder, did something different. Not dramatically different. Not in a way anyone else would notice at first. But every evening, after the other workers had gone home, he stayed a little longer, not to work overtime for extra pay. He stayed to study the blueprints. He stayed to understand not just his piece of the wall, but the whole structure. Why it was shaped this way, why the load-bearing columns were placed there, what the architect had been trying to create. He asked questions. He read books on his own time. He made small sketches in a notebook he kept in his coat pocket. He was not just learning a trade. He was learning to think like a designer. And 20 years passed. The laborer was still laying bricks. He was good at it. He had raised his wage modestly over the years. He had a small house, a reliable routine, and a vague sense, not spoken aloud, not even fully acknowledged, that something had been left undone. The builder owned the company. Now, I am not telling you this story to make you feel small if you have been the laborer. I have been the laborer. I know exactly what that life feels like from the inside. I am telling you this story because the difference between those two men was not talent. It was not luck. It was not even hard work. Both men worked hard. The difference was this: one man made a living. The other designed a life. And the decision to be the builder. That decision is available to you right now, today, regardless of where you are standing. So what does it mean, practically, to design a life? Let me be precise, because I think this is where most people get lost. They hear the word design, and they think it means dreaming. They think it means vision boards and wishes and hoping hard enough that something good arrives. That is not what I mean. Design is not dreaming. Design is deciding. There is a profound difference between those two things. A dreamer looks at the horizon and says, wouldn't it be wonderful if? A designer looks at the same horizon and says, Ape, here is what I intend, here is the plan I am executing, and here is the person I am becoming in order to make it real. Let me give you the 3 questions I believe every person must answer if they intend to move from merely making a living to genuinely designing a life. In the first question, what do I want my life to look like? Not what do I want to earn, not what do I want to own, what do I want my life to look, feel, and be like? The texture of the days, the quality of the relationships, the sense of purpose when I wake up in the morning. You cannot design something you have never clearly imagined. The architect must see the building before the first brick is laid. The second question, who do I need to become? This is the question most people skip. They ask what they need to do, what they need to have, what they need to earn. But the real question is always about becoming. Because the life you want requires a version of you that does not yet fully exist. And the work of designing a life is largely the work of designing yourself. The third question, what small disciplines practiced daily will close the gap? Not giant leaps, not dramatic gestures, small disciplines, daily. Compounded over time. That is the architecture of an extraordinary life. Not the grand moment, but the quiet, consistent, invisible work that precedes it. Those 3 questions. Then answer them honestly and you have a blueprint. Ignore them and you have only a hope. I want to spend some time with the first great contrast because I think it is the one that cuts the deepest. The person who earns and the person who builds. On the surface, they can look identical. Both go to work. Both collect a paycheck. Both pay their bills. Both call themselves productive members of society. And they are right to do so. Earning is honorable. I want to say that again clearly because I never want you to hear me dismiss the dignity of honest work. Earning is honorable, but earning and building are fundamentally different orientations toward the same activity. The earner asks, how much can I get for my time? The builder asks, so what am I constructing with my time? The earner's focus is the transaction. The builder's focus is the accumulation. Not the accumulation of money alone, though that often follows, but the accumulation of skill, of wisdom, of relationships, of reputation, of character. The builder understands something the earner has not yet grasped it, that every day is a deposit into a life, not just a wage. Here is a question worth sitting with. Be honest with yourself right now. When you finish a day of work, what do you take home? I do not mean physically. I mean, what do you carry away that you did not have that morning? A new skill, a deeper understanding, a relationship strengthened, a discipline reinforced? Or did you simply exchange time for money and call it even? If you find yourself answering that question with discomfort, I want you to know that discomfort is a gift. That discomfort is the first signal that something in you knows the difference between earning and building. And the moment you can feel that difference, really feel it, is the moment you can begin to change it. The builder does not necessarily earn more on any given Tuesday, but across a decade, across a lifetime, the builder and the earner end up in profoundly different places. Not because of luck, not because of circumstance, because of the daily orientation and because of the question they ask themselves every single morning. What am I constructing today? Ask it and mean it. There is a second parable I want to share with you, and this one is about time. Two people walk past the same empty plot of land in early spring. The ground is bare. The soil is cold. To the eye, it is nothing, just dirt and potential. The passerby looks at it and moves on. Perhaps they think, nothing there yet. And perhaps they think, I'll come back when something is growing. They are not lazy people. They are not bad people. They simply have not yet learned the lesson the seasons are always trying to teach us, that the harvest is never in the same season as the planting. The gardener looks at the same plot and sees something different. Not what is there, but what could be there. Ending, and more importantly, what will be there if certain disciplines are practiced. The gardener does not look for the harvest in March. The gardener plants in March so that the harvest comes in September. This is one of the most important distinctions I know about the design of a life. Most people live like the passerby. They look at their current circumstances and they see only what is visible today. They look at their bank account and see a number. They look at their skills and see a ceiling. They look at their relationships and see what they are, not what they could become. And because they see only what is present, they never plant for what is possible. Then the gardener understands something that changes everything. You do not get the harvest the same day you plant the seed. In fact, there is a long period, weeks, sometimes months, where the garden looks like nothing is happening. The soil is quiet. The gardener cannot see the roots growing, cannot see the invisible work taking place beneath surface. And this is where most people quit. This is where the passerby says, see, I told you, nothing is growing, and walks away. Hey, but the gardener knows. The gardener has studied the seasons. To me, the gardener trusts the process, not blindly, but intelligently, based on the understanding that nature does not break its own laws. Plant the right seeds. Tend them with the right disciplines. Give them the right environment, and the harvest will come. Your life is that garden. Your daily habits are the seeds. Your character is the soil. Yinding and the harvest, the life you want, is already written into the seeds you are choosing to plant today. The only question is whether you are planting deliberately or simply letting weeds take the field. Now, I want to address the second great contrast. And this one, I believe, is the most personally challenging of the three. The person who reacts to life and the person who architects it. Here is what I have observed across decades of watching people live. Most people are fundamentally reactive. Not because they are weak, not because they are unintelligent, but because nobody ever taught them that there was another option. They react to the economy. They react to their employer's decisions. They react to what their family expects of them. They react to what their peers are doing. They react to the news, to the culture, to the mood of the room they happen to be standing in. And they call this living. But I want to ask you something. If you are always reacting, then who is leading? If your mood is determined by the weather, your confidence by what your coworker said, your goals by what your neighbor is pursuing, your values by what the television tells you to want, then who is actually designing your life? Someone is, something is. But it is not you. The architect of a life does something different. The architect begins with the end in mind, not vaguely, not wishfully, but clearly and specifically. They decide in advance what kind of person they intend to be, what kind of relationships they intend to build, what kind of contribution they intend to make. And then they work backwards from that vision to the present moment, asking, what must I do today to be consistent with that design? This is not about control. And I want to be clear about that because I have seen people misunderstand this and become rigid and fearful. Life will always bring seasons you did not plan for. Winter comes whether you are ready or not. The architect does not pretend otherwise. But the architect has something the reactive person does not have, a design that is strong enough to survive the unexpected, a foundation that holds when the storms arrive, a sense of direction that reasserts itself even after the detours. You cannot prevent every difficulty, but you can decide in advance who you will be when the difficulty arrives. You can decide what you value, what you will not compromise, what you are building toward regardless of what the weather does. Learning that decision, made in advance, held with discipline, is the difference between a life that happens to you and a life that you happen upon with intention. If what I have shared so far is speaking to something in you, if you feel a stirring, a recognition, a sense that this is exactly the conversation you needed to have today, then I want you to do one thing. Subscribe right here, right now. Because this is what we do every single week. We go deep into the ideas that actually change the way a person lives. Not surface level motivation, not empty encouragement, the real philosophy, the hard distinctions, the kind of thinking that when you carry it with you, changes what you do on an ordinary Tuesday morning. And what I am about to share with you next, the third contrast, the parable of the tree and the weed, and the question that I believe is the most important question a human being can ask. That is where everything we have covered so far comes together. Do not miss it. There is a question I have asked audiences in every corner of the world. A simple question, a short question. And I have watched it land differently on different people. Some with a quiet nod, some with tears they did not expect, standing, some with the sudden stillness of a person who has just been caught in a truth they had been avoiding. The question is this: are you wishing life were easier, or are you wishing you were better? Sit with that. Standing, because those two wishes, though they may feel similar from the inside, lead to entirely different lives. The person who wishes life were easier is always waiting, then eating for the right conditions, waiting for the economy to improve, waiting for the right opportunity to appear, waiting for the circumstances to align. And while they wait, they grow quietly resentful of the people who seem to have it easier, of the system that seems rigged against them, ending of the universe that does not appear to be cooperating. I understand that person. I have been that person. And I want to say to them, gently but directly, the conditions will never be perfect. They were not perfect for anyone who ever built something worth having. The conditions were difficult for every person who ever designed a life worth living. The conditions are not the variable. You are the variable. The person who wishes they were better has made a fundamental shift in orientation. They have stopped looking outward at the circumstances and started looking inward at the person. They have accepted, not with resignation, but with genuine power, that the quality of their life is largely determined by the quality of the person living it. This is the most liberating idea I know, because circumstances are largely outside your control. But you, who you are, what you know, what you practice, what you believe, what you value, how you spend your hours, you are entirely within your control. And the moment you transfer your energy from wishing the world were different to wishing you were better, and then actually doing the work of becoming better, that is the moment the life you want begins to become possible. Not easy, possible. There is a difference. And I would rather have possible than comfortable any day of the week. I want to tell you about a tree and a weed. Now, this is not a story about good and evil. Both the tree and the weed are natural things. Both are alive. Both are growing. And if you walked past them quickly, you might not think to compare them at all. But spend time with them. Study them the way a farmer does, or the way a person who tends land for a lifetime does. And you will begin to see the most important difference in all of nature. The weed grows fast, remarkably fast. Overnight, sometimes. It spreads without effort, without tending, without any particular direction. It takes what is available, whatever light, whatever water, whatever soil happens to be nearby, and it consumes it. And for a season, it looks like success. It looks like growth. But pull a weed from the ground, hold it in your hand. Look at its roots. They are shallow. Why perhaps, but shallow. The weed has spread its roots just far enough to survive, no deeper than necessary, no further than required. It has optimized for the short term, for the immediate, for the available. And when the drought comes, when the season turns, when the resources disappear, when the conditions change, the weed dies. Not slowly, quickly, because it had no depth. It had spread, but it had not grown down. Now look at the tree. The tree does not grow fast, not in the beginning. In the first years, most of the tree's growth is invisible. It is happening underground, in the root system, in the foundation. A person watching the tree in its early years might say, is barely growing, and they would be wrong. It is growing where it matters most. The tree grows down before it grows up. It establishes depth before it reaches for height. And because of that invisible, patient underground work that no one sees, work that earns no immediate applause. The tree can eventually stand in storms that would flatten everything around it. This is the parable of a designed life. The person who designs their life is growing roots. They are building character before they build a reputation. They are developing discipline before they develop an audience. They are becoming, quietly and without fanfare, the kind of person who can sustain the life they are building. The person who only makes a living is often growing like a weed, fast, reactive, spreading wherever opportunity happens to appear. And for a season, it looks impressive, ending, but without roots, without the depth of character, the clarity of values, the foundation of daily disciplines. When the hard seasons come, there is nothing to hold. Grow like the tree. Walk slowly, deeply, with intention, and when the storms arrive, as they always do, you will still be standing. Let me share with you one of the ideas that changed my life more than any other single idea. I have said it many times, and I will say it again because it bears repeating until it becomes a reflex, a work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, I already work hard. I give everything I have to my work. I am exhausted at the end of every day. How could I possibly work harder? And I want to clarify what I mean, because I am not talking about more hours. I am not talking about grinding yourself into the ground in the name of productivity. I am talking about a different kind of work entirely. Working on yourself means reading the books that expand your thinking. It means spending time with people who challenge you to become more. It means examining your habits, honestly, without flattery, and asking whether they are building you toward the life you want or simply maintaining the life you have. It means asking every single day, who am I becoming? Because here is the truth that took me years to fully understand. Your income will rarely exceed your personal development. Your relationships will rarely exceed your character. Your contribution will rarely exceed your capacity. And your capacity, your ability to think, to lead, to create, to serve, that is determined by who you are, not by what you do. The job is where you apply what you have, but the self is where you develop what you have to give. And if you are only ever pouring out, only ever applying, never replenishing, never growing, then you will eventually run dry. The well will empty, and you will wonder why the results have stopped coming, not realizing that the results always follow the person, and the person has stopped growing. This is not complicated. It is simple. But simple, as I have often said, does not mean easy. It is easy to read tonight, and it is easy not to. Then it is easy to spend an hour in reflection and study, and it is easy to spend that same hour in distraction. Both are easy, but only one of them compounds over time into a life of extraordinary depth and possibility. Choose the one that compounds every day without exception, and watch what happens to you over 5 years, over 10. The transformation will astonish you. There is a principle I want to address now because it belongs at the heart of any honest discussion about designing a life. And it is this: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Think about that. Not the people you admire from a distance. Not the people you follow or read about. The people you actually spend your time with. The people whose voices you hear most often, whose attitudes fill the room you are in, whose habits and beliefs and expectations quietly shape your own. Now, I am not asking you to abandon the people you love. I am not telling you to be cold or calculating about your relationships. I am asking you to be honest, genuinely, uncomfortably honest, about the influence your closest associations are having on the design of your life. Are the people around you expanding your thinking or confirming your limitations? Are they challenging you to become more? Or are they comfortable with you staying exactly as you are? Are their habits, their conversations, their daily choices? Are they pointing in the direction you want to go? Because here is what I have observed. You can have the best blueprint for a life, the clearest vision, the most disciplined habits. And if you spend your hours surrounded by people who do not share that orientation, then the friction alone will wear you down. Not because they are bad people, but because environment is powerful. Atmosphere is powerful. The expectations of the people around us are more powerful than most of us are willing to admit. Designing a life means designing your environment. It means being intentional about who you invite into your closest circle. It means seeking out people who are further along the road you want to travel. Not to compete with them, but to learn from them, to be stretched by them, to have your vision of what is possible expanded by the example of their lives. Find those people, pursue them, invest in those relationships. Branding it, because the right 5 people in your life will do more for the design of your future than almost any other single decision you can make. And if you cannot find them nearby, find them in books. Find them in their recorded words and their written ideas. A great library is a great circle of friends. And those friends are always available, always patient, and always ready to give you their best thinking. I want to return now to the third great contrast, and I want to go deeper into it, because I believe it is the one that most quietly determines the entire direction of a person's life. The person who wishes it were easier, and the person who wishes they were better. Let me describe them both, because I think we all carry a little of each inside us. And the art of designing a life is in part the art of choosing which voice to listen to. The person who wishes it were easier is not a villain. They are tired. They have been working hard, and the results have not matched the effort, and the gap between where they are and where they want to be feels enormous and unfair. And so they look for relief. They look for shortcuts. They look for the path that requires less of them. And here is the cruelest part of that orientation. It guarantees more difficulty, not less. Because the world does not get easier in response to your wish for ease. The world gets harder for the person who is not growing. The challenges that felt manageable at 25 feel overwhelming at 40. 5 if you have not been growing in the intervening years. The problems do not shrink. And if you have not grown, you shrink relative to them. But the person who wishes they were better, that person has discovered something remarkable. They have discovered that the answer to a difficult world is not a simpler world. It is a more capable, more disciplined, more wise and resilient version of themselves. And here is the gift hidden inside that orientation. When you focus on becoming better, the problems do not disappear, but you become larger than the problems. The same challenge that once felt like a wall begins to feel like a step. Not because the challenge changed, but because you changed. This is the whole secret of a designed life. And not that you arrange the circumstances so that nothing hard ever happens. But that you develop yourself so thoroughly, so deliberately, so consistently that when the hard things happen, and they will, you have the character to meet them, earn the skills to navigate them, and the wisdom to learn from them. Ending the wish you were better. Work to become better every single day. Without exception, without waiting for perfect conditions, without needing applause or recognition or immediate results. Do it because you have decided, not hoped, not wished, but decided that you are the architect of your own life. And architects do not wait for the weather to improve. They build. I want to close with something personal. Something I want you to carry with you long after this conversation has ended. Every single day, whether you are aware of it or not, you are designing a life. You are making choices, large and small, that are accumulating into a structure. The question is not whether you are building. You are always building. The only question is whether you are building by intention or by default. The person who never plans a life does not end up with no life. They end up with a life shaped entirely by the defaults, by habit, by peer pressure, by the path of least resistance, by whatever the culture happened to be offering that week. That is a life, but it is not a designed life. I want you to do something for me. Tonight, when the day is done and the noise has quieted, I want you to take 10 minutes, just 10, And I want you to ask yourself those 3 questions I gave you earlier. What do I want my life to look like? Not tomorrow, not next year. In 10 years, what does the texture of those days look like? Who is there? What are you doing? What does it feel like to be you in that life? Who do I need to become to make that life real? And what qualities, what disciplines, what knowledge, what character does that version of you carry that you do not yet fully carry today? And what small thing, one small thing, can I do tomorrow that is consistent with becoming that person? Not a grand gesture, not a dramatic overhaul, one small thing, one seed. And because that is how gardens grow. One seed at a time, planted with intention, tended with discipline, trusted to the seasons. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not too ordinary or too damaged or too far from where you want to be. You are simply at the beginning of the next chapters. And the next chapter is yours to write. Make a living. Arding, you must honor that work. Do it with dignity and care. But do not let the urgency of making a living crowd out the deeper work of designing a life. Because the living will sustain you for a season. But the life you design with intention and discipline and the daily practice of becoming, that will sustain everything. You have everything you need begin. You have always had everything you need to begin. The only question that remains is the same one I asked myself in that field all those years ago. Is this it in this time? Let your answer be a design, not a resignation. If you have stayed with me through this entire conversation, through all 3 contrasts, through the parables, through the questions, then you already know something that most people around you have not yet stopped to consider. You have already begun to think like an architect rather than a laborer. That is not nothing. That is everything. Subscribe right here. Because this is what we build together every single week. The philosophy, the distinctions, the parables, the hard and honest thinking that separates the person who earns from the person who builds. You do not want to miss what is coming next. And if this message added something real to your life today, leave a like. Not for me, but as a signal to yourself that you are the kind of person who takes these ideas seriously. Because the person who takes these ideas seriously, that is the architect, that is the builder, that is the one who looks at the empty plot of land in early spring and sees not dirt, but a garden. You came here today looking for something. I hope you found it. Not just information, but a new way of seeing. The distinction is simple, make a living, yes, but design a life. Begin tonight. Dan, thanks for watching. The end screen has more in the same world, and your next step is right there waiting. Thanks for being here. Pick whichever video on the end screen calls to you.